Every Premier League club has that one signing that just makes too much sense this summer. Not necessarily the biggest name, but the one that they need to make. So today, what we're going to be doing is looking at a move that fits the club, the manager, the system, and more specifically, the player that is making each and every move. So that's right. Today, we're going through every Premier League club and picking the one player that they need to sign this summer. Let's get into it. First, we have Arsenal, and I'm going with Alex Scott. From Bournemouth, this feels like a move that could explode over the next few years. He's only 22 years old. Technically, he is excellent, incredibly intelligent between the lines. I remember watching him in the Bournemouth versus Arsenal game, especially in this late stretch of the season. He has been so crucial to Bournemouth and how they played under Iraola, but he gives Arsenal's legs in the midfield. With Declan Rice playing so many minutes every single season, Arsenal need another midfielder that can operate next to him or even rotate in for him when needed. Scott can play next to Rice. He can play next to Martin Odegaard. He can play in a more advanced role alongside someone like Eberechi Eze if Arsenal want to make him as a more attacking-minded signing. I think he'll play as an 8 for Arsenal, a 6/8. I think he'll probably play with Zubimendi and Rice kind of in that rotation and make it 3, and you start 2 of those 3 every game. And honestly, this feels like perfect timing. Bournemouth are entering a new time with a new manager. Scott will, looking like a player that can really burst onto the scene for England in the next few years. And Arsenal are Premier League champions, European finalists. This is a massive step up for him in really how he can take his own level to another level. And I know people will mention maybe a Matthias Fernandes, but relegated players rarely make that jump successfully to elite level clubs. The only one I can really think of in recent times is a player like Nathan Ake, maybe, if you want to say that he was, I don't even know if I would say he was a huge success at City, but he was a very good player and really did a good job for them. Arsenal needs someone technically that's very good, but athletic enough to cover the ground that a player like Declan Rice can cover. For Aston Villa, I'm going with Jared Bowen. Villa desperately need balance on the right-hand side. Too many times this season, that side has just lacked consistency. Bowen fixes that, I think, immediately. He gives you goals. He gives you assists. He gives you width. That's a big thing. Being able to hold the width for Aston Villa next year is going to be really, really important. He's still one of the most productive wide players in England. And at 29 years old, this feels like the right time for him. West Ham going down this year. Villa have Champions League football to play. He's never played at that level. They're competing at the top. And for Bowen personally, if he wants to really, firmly get in the picture for the next Euro cycle, this is a big move for him, and this is a move he needs to make ASAP. The other option, of course, being Crescencio Somerville, but if West Ham were to sell a winger this summer, I think it will be Bowen over Somerville. I actually think they'd rather cash in on Bowen while his value is still as high as it is. Somerville, on the other hand, is a player that will continue to see his value rise over the coming years, and then they can sell him. So I think that they'll probably look to move Bowen on. It just depends on that loyalty, and if loyalty in football is real or not, obviously based on my pick that he's getting sold, I don't think that loyalty exists. I think West Ham will try to do what they can to make ends meet from a financial aspect. Bournemouth, I went with Sporting Ousmane Diomande. I think this would be unreal business. He's still very young. Honestly feels ridiculous because I feel like he's been playing for Sporting at a high level for so long now. He's tall, physical, commanding. He's calm in possession, can be very strong from an aerial threat as well. He plays maturely at center back. I think he brings a level of maturity that Bournemouth's going to need because Marco Senesi is likely leaving this summer. He's still only 22 years old, and we see players similar to Maxime Lacroix or Marco Senesi moving from, I think he was playing in the Dutch league to Bournemouth, and now he's going to probably take a step up. Talk about him here later as well, actually. But top-level talent, spending a few years at a strong mid-table side before eventually making the leap to an elite-level club in Europe. And Bournemouth are now in a position where they can attract players like this. Obviously, Diomande's been doing a good job for Sporting, but being able to take that next step in his career, play for a mid-table Premier League club before making a jump to an elite-level club anywhere across Europe, it needs to happen. And Bournemouth, like I said, can attract those kind of players. The other name I considered for this list is I've obviously talked about Alex Scott moving to Arsenal. I think Hayden Hackney from Middlesbrough will be a player that they could look at this summer as well. But Bournemouth's market this summer is honestly difficult to predict given the fact that they've got a new manager, they've got European football, they've got so many new variations to think about or variables to think about. But let me know your thoughts. Who do you think Bournemouth go and get this summer? But speaking of Hayden Hackney, Brentford. I went with Brentford to go get him. He was getting a move eventually. He's 23. He understands English football. He's played in the championship for a few years. He's technically excellent, can cover ground, and I think a really smart midfield profile is something that Brentford would just love to have in their team. This just feels like one of those transfers where 6 months later says, yeah, of course Brentford signed him. I mean, look, he's a really good player. He's shown it for a few years now in Middlesbrough's system. I think another player from that Middlesbrough midfield, Aiden Morris, will see move to a better team in the coming months. Maybe this summer, maybe next in January or next summer. I think in the next year we're talking about Aiden Morris making a move from Middlesbrough. If they don't get promoted to the Premier League, of course, we'll just have to wait and see. But Hayden Hackney, Brentford just feels like such a cut and dry. Like this one, we're just waiting for the ink to dry. It feels so obvious. Brighton, I went with a player that I'm not super familiar with, which is why I think he'll work. But Arthur Atta, he's been, he's young, he's technical. I think for Udinese, he's been very good. From what I've been reading about him, he's got 5 goals and 3 assists from midfield. And at just 23 years old, there's still a ton of room for him to grow. He'll be playing in Europe. Again, like I said, with Brighton competing in Europe, they need midfield depth. He's a player who can progress the ball through pressure. He offers goals. He offers assists. And the other interesting option that I looked at with, Bart Verbruggen probably moving on here this summer or next summer, Nicholas Poster is a player who I've seen linked to them, Austrian league goalkeeper. He would go in goal, but I think that it's not as interesting to go after goalkeeper options, so I went with Arthur Atta instead. Earlier, I mentioned how Maxime Lacroix has made the move from a mid-table team and is likely going to go to a high-level Premier League team, and this is where we see him go. I think for Xabi Alonso, Chelsea need another center back, and Lacroix just makes too much sense. He's already comfortable in a back three, which we know Xabi Alonso wants to play. He's athletic, aggressive. He's very quick, so he can defend those large spaces. Maybe if Chelsea wants to play with a higher line. And at 26 years old, this is probably the perfect age profile signing for Chelsea, given where a lot of their young talent is moving into. The other option is Murillo of Nottingham Forest. But realistically, when it comes to value and market value and what players are going to go for, obviously, he's just moved to City, so Crystal Palace don't want to sell another center back. But I think that Maxime Lacroix would be a much easier deal to get over the line than a Murillo, and so I think that Nottingham Forest would make this extremely difficult to get, so Lacroix seems like the more achievable option. Coventry City, of course, going after Daisen Maeda would be brilliant bit of business. He's obviously been really good. He's got 1 year left on his contract for Celtic, another title-winning season with them. He's experienced, he's extremely relentless, a big runner off the ball, and he's still producing at 28 years old, of course, entering kind of those prime years that you want, especially from an experience standpoint if Coventry City want to stay up. He instantly raises the intensity of their team, and I think that him and their attack would be really important if they desire staying up, which of course they do. The fun alternative I looked at was Mason Mount on loan. I mean, he likes working with Frank Lampard, Chelsea connections, Manchester United, he's not really playing much for. So it'd be interesting to see him go on loan. I don't think Manchester United's going to send him out on loan. And I think the wages would make this absolutely impossible for a permanent deal. But that's just a fun one that we would talk about as well. For Crystal Palace with Lacroix going out the door, I think they need to make a signing. And I went with Taylor Harwood-Bellis, with obviously the Southampton not getting promoted. I think this feels very realistic. They're going to stay in Southampton, staying in the championship. I don't think Harwood-Bellis is going to stay there with them. And Palace are exactly the type of club where a player like Harwood-Bellis takes a major step in his career, again, plays for a few seasons, and then makes that step to the next level and goes and moves on. He's physical, aggressive. I feel like I'm saying this about a lot of the players, but these are the types of profiles that we see in the Premier League week in and week out. He's extremely comfortable in possession, and I feel like he's so frustrating. I watched championship playoffs, and he's just he's extremely arrogant, and I think that his arrogance is going to see him force a move out, and I think Palace are probably going to get a good deal for him, in all honesty. I did think about Quentin Timber. I did see that link online. But after recently joining Marseille, I'd be surprised if this move happened already. And, I mean, I don't think he's gotten a ton of game time at Marseille so far. But after 6 months, I'd be surprised if Marseille make this sell. For Everton, I'm actually going to go with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I was originally, looking at the prospects of Jack Grealish joining on a permanent, but I just don't see this one happening. I do think that Jack Grealish leaves Manchester City. I just don't think that the valuation is something Everton want to reach, especially with how well Everton's played this last year. Since Grealish's injury, I think they played much better without him than they did with him. So bringing in a proven Premier League right back, I think Wan-Bissaka is a fantastic player. I think West Ham was below his level. I think if Everton could get him, I think that'd be a coup. I think this would be a great bit of business. And I think that he's a talented player. I think that's really all there is to it. Obviously, there's a few other players that can go into those fullback positions. And Nico Williams of Nottingham Forest, a Kieran Trippier, if he wanted to stay in the Premier League, he could probably make a move to Everton. But I do think that Wan-Bissaka is a realistic option if they want to look at this. I also looked at if they want a winger to go for Somerville. But again, I think West Ham would rather keep him than sell him right now. So I did say that they would keep Somerville. So I did go with Aaron Wan-Bissaka as the option for Everton to sign this summer. Fulham, I went with Ricardo Pepi. I think they need goals, so Ricardo Pepi is the obvious choice. He's been linked for a few years now. He's thriving at PSV currently. I think he's been having a few good seasons so far, and this one just feels like a move that finally needs to get over the line. Fulham desperately need a striker. Raul Jimenez is not getting any younger, and I just think that it's time for them to move on from him. They need a striker who can consistently stay in the center of the box, finish chances, and this move probably happens after the World Cup, depending on the United States run, but stylistically, I think it fits kind of what Fulham want to do. The other player they're linked with is Andre Illich, who granted has 9 assists in the Bundesliga this season. However, I think with what Marco Silva wants and how Fulham play, they need somebody more like Raul Jimenez, who's going to be in the box and finish those chances rather than someone who's going to hold up the ball and try to play kind of into the attack. I think Ricardo Pepi does a little bit more of just ball striking and a little bit more goal scoring that they'll be looking for this summer. Hull, I really had no idea who to go for when it came to Hull, so I went with Fabio Carvalho. I think it would just be fun. He's a creative player. He's technical. I think they'll get him for a cheap deal, and he just needs to go somewhere where he'll consistently play. Obviously, I think he got signed on a permanent by Brentford, but I just don't see it happening. He's valued on the transfer market at about $10 million. They need something exciting. They need someone fans can rally behind, and I think he's a Premier League level talent. It's just whether or not he will achieve that level or not this season. Joe Gelhardt returning permanently also feels likely, especially with Leeds potentially cashing in while they still can. I think Hull will be looking to secure a few pieces where they can yo-yo. Do I think they'll take Fabio Carvalho down with them? Maybe. If not, maybe they sign him for about $10 million and then sell him for $15 million when they go down. We'll just have to wait and see what he can do for them this season. Ipswich, I didn't go with a permanent deal. I did go with a loan deal. Liam Delap feels like a reset for both Ipswich and for the player. He still has quality. The physical tools are obvious. He's very strong. He's very fast. But right now he needs confidence and consistent playing time. Two things he isn't going to get at Chelsea. Ipswich would give him that. And because if he stays stuck in the wrong situation much longer, he risks falling in the same cycle. We've seen many highly rated Chelsea attackers of just not working out in the long term. And so I think Liam Delap needs to press reset, needs to find where his style of play will fit in Xabi Alonso's system. Another option I looked at for Ipswich was Zion Fleming, but because he's been linked with the club, but I'd be surprised if Zion Fleming is playing in the Premier League next year. I think if he's going to be playing in a first division anywhere, it will be in the Bundesliga. I don't see him playing in the Premier League, that's for sure. Leeds, I went with Red Bull Leipzig's Cyril Gertrudia. He played at Sunderland this past season, didn't play too much, but he offers coverage at right back, he offers coverage at center back, and even in a back three, he can operate there as well. With Leeds likely needing defensive flexibility to survive, this move would make a lot of sense in my opinion. I don't think Sunderland will bring him back permanently, and Leeds should absolutely try to jump on this opportunity. I also looked at a player like Shea Charles of Southampton. but with Ethan Ampadu and Anton Stach already there and having a really good year, Leeds are probably okay in midfield when it comes to priority signings, but I think somebody that can kind of fill into that center back and right back spot would be really important for them as they look to stay up for a second consecutive year. Liverpool will need to shell out some more money this summer to rebuild. Obviously, Mo Salah's left. I'm not going to be addressing that position. I'm going to be addressing Virgil van Dijk's position because, again, despite him having a pretty good year, I think it's time for him to be replaced. This rebuild continues with Jeremy Jacquet. He's special. He's only 20 years old. He's mature. He's been playing for Rennes probably 2 full seasons now, probably nearing 80 appearances, 90 appearances maybe, and he's physically ready for that senior level at a high elite club. Liverpool needs to start preparing for life after Van Dijk, as I mentioned, and I think this guy feels exactly like the player that's going to, they target before his value explodes. I think his value is already going to be high. He's already being valued on the transfer market at 55 million. The other option they could look at is Nico Schlotterbeck. He was another possibility, but the fee and the wages would be massive for Schlotterbeck comparatively. And I think right now Liverpool need to look at kind of cutting some of that wages back after Van Dijk and Salah leaves. Obviously Salah's leaving, but I think he's younger, cheaper, and fits a longer term rebuild. Manchester City, it drives me crazy to say this, but I love this signing if they go and get Elliot Anderson. I'd love him at Arsenal because I talked about Alex Scott. I think Elliot Anderson does everything I talked about with Alex Scott here. Alex Scott's just a little bit cheaper. He can progress the ball, press, cover ground, carry possession, play multiple roles in midfield as an 8 or 6. He'll be playing next to Declan Rice this summer, so it'll be interesting to see how they work together. But next to Declan Rice for England, he could become one of the most important midfielders in the country over the next few years. Obviously, we've seen Declan Rice a mainstay, but we've seen Adam Wharton play next to him. We've seen Elliot Anderson play next to him. We've seen Calvin Phillips play next to him. We've seen a lot of players come into these roles. And with City constantly evolving their midfield, this feels like the perfect player to kind of make a statement in Enzo Maresca's first season in charge. The other option I looked at was Valentino Livramento, but Matheus Nunes has actually looked really solid in that role. And as you know, Enzo Maresca likes to kind of invert his fullbacks. We saw a lot of that with Cucurella and Reece James. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that in the future. Manchester United, Casemiro is out the door. Ugarte's just never really worked out. They need a midfielder who can, give structure to that team. Obviously, they have the attacking side of midfield, but they need the defensive side of midfield. That's why I picked Aurelien Tchouameni. If Real Madrid are willing to sell because of, midfield balance or even, the issues we see taking place in the locker room, United should throw everything at this deal. I talked about Casemiro leaving. United need the physicality and the presence that Tchouameni offers. Just kind of just him being there is so much more than United have had over the past few years. And he can dominate in transition. He can release a lot of these really talented attackers. He costs a lot, but United need that price in midfield if they really want to take their game to the next level. Another player I looked at for this Manchester United team was Lewis Hall. Obviously, Luke Shaw's played a lot of mids. Patrick Dorgle's been playing as left winger. I think Lewis Hall would be a really good signing for them. He's just 21. He'll get his big move soon, but I think he spends another year at Newcastle. So for Newcastle, I did go with Nico Williams. I think Livramento will leave, whether it's to Manchester City, whether it's to Manchester United, whether it's to somewhere else in Europe. I do think he'll go, and I think Valentino Livramento offers a really good right back option while Lewis Hall stays on the left. And you obviously have he's a right-footed player, but he can switch onto the left side and play as a right-footed left back if needed. He's still only 25 years old, which when I was doing the research on this, I was very surprised. He's versatile enough to play both fullback positions. The other player I looked at was Antonio Nusa, but with Leipzig already dealing with a massive interest in other players such as Diomande, that move probably depends on the World Cup. If he really performs well, he could get a big money move, but I don't think that will be happening this summer. Nottingham Forest, of course, we talked about Elliot Anderson on the move. That's why I actually went with Shea Charles of Southampton. It feels like a classic, really smart Premier League move. Forest need another energetic midfielder who can cover a lot of ground, be really good defensively, while still helping the team retain possession, but progress the ball too. Shea Charles gives you exactly that. He's strong. He's very tall. and he's excellent in the air. He'll be comfortable receiving the ball, and he's a City Academy player, so he has that kind of tactical foundation, having been in the City Academy, to where he can help progress the ball really well and be comfortable in possession. Sunderland, I went with a championship level player, Femi Aziz of Millwall. I think it was a really smart pickup. He's valued only 5 million. Obviously, I was a big fan of Simon Adingra when he joined, but Adingra's struggle, went out on loan almost immediately that January. 11 goals and 8 assists for Millwall is no joke. And I think Sunderland need another wide player who can actually consistently produce. And I think this is the exact player that they want to go after. He's direct. He's 24 years of age. He brings energy and end product. And I think this would be a perfect option. For Tottenham, I did go with Marco Senesi. 22 million was a good deal. It does look like he is signing a new contract, so they could look elsewhere in the center back market. They do need to replace Christian Romero, who will be leaving. I think that's pretty much no doubt. Like, that's on the table, and that's it. I think Van de Ven could leave as well. Tottenham are going to need a full rebuild in defense. I mean, Pedro Porro's better than where the level they're at. Romero is going to leave, wants to leave. Van de Ven wants to leave. Udogie may leave as well, may go back to Italy. I think they really need a full defensive rebuild, but I think Senesi would be a very good financial move if he doesn't sign this new contract and leaves as a free agent. Bournemouth are playing in Europe, and if he leaves, there's no guarantee that he'll be in Europe next season. In 2027. So I think he'll be able to get a good wages if he goes to Tottenham, but I don't see it happening. The other option, if we were to go for a midfield option, just hypothetically, I think Noah Siddiqui would be a really good pick. Obviously, you've got Archie Gray and Bergvall, so imagine those three in midfield together. I think that they could do really well together. But I do think getting some European experience will be really important for Siddiqui, and I think he moves to a bigger club than Tottenham, which isn't saying much. But that is what I think Siddiqui should do for his career moving forward. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want to check out more videos, check out my channel, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys soon.